Am I hallucinating or did that barn just move? I think the appearance of Russia's strange-looking modified turtle tanks reveals a few different things. One of them is a capability gap in modern short-range air defense vehicles. By the field manual, armored vehicles assaulting an objective are supposed to be protected from aerial threats by air defense vehicles, like the Russian 2K-22 Tunguska or the American Avenger system. But we've seen that recent assaults by both sides don't use these vehicles. It turns out they're more useful at shooting down aircraft than they are for shooting down fast-moving, low-flying FPV drones.
What air defense doing?
Turtle tanks appear to be a symptom of this wider problem within SHORAD. Many jokes have been made about how they're constructed from crudely welded together thin sheets of metal, that it looks like the Jawa's Sandcrawler from Star Wars, an Assault Shed, or my 2006 Toyota Camry. But the Ukrainian army is actually taking the threat seriously, so I thought it might be worth actually looking at. Ukraine just captured their first one, which has revealed some questions and answers about its countermeasures. Then the Russian Ministry of Defense also released a video about its construction process. So we've got a lot to look at in this episode. But before we get into that, I want to remind you guys that tonight is your last chance to win the 10-point Siege 425 crossbow, all made possible with our partner GetEnterToWin.com. The 10-point crossbow shoots bolts at 425 feet per second and comes with a Rangemaster 100 scope. 3 Evo X center punch arrows are included. The 2-stage trigger sports a zero creep design for better control and high precision downrange accuracy. It's clear why so many Special Forces units around the world still have these in their arsenal today. Your chance ends tonight, so click the link in the description and hurry over to go.getentertowin.com/taskandpurpose, grab a cool limited edition mug, and get automatically entered to win before it's too late. Just click the link, grab a custom mug, and get automatically entered to win. Hurry up though, the deadline to enter is tonight at 11:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. You also must be a US resident to claim the prize. Good luck, Spare Parts Army. Russian forces first put these Mad Max Fury Road looking vehicles into service in the middle of April 2024. We initially observed them being used in assaults on the Ukrainian towns of Chasvi Yar and Krasnohorivka. Then, in May, they started to appear in the north in the Kharkiv direction. First it was just 1 or 2, now it's an entire platoon outfitted with these modifications. What have the results been in combat? Somewhat mixed so far. Footage from the front lines has shown that the vehicles survived several FPV drone strikes where it rips the sheet metal off and the tank keeps moving. It's also shown over a dozen abandoned and destroyed ones. Whoops, wrong photo. Reports from Ukrainian Telegram channels revealed that they had to expend multiple drones on one tank. They also stated that electronic countermeasures attached to the turtle tanks in the lead of the formations was dropping some of their FPV drones like flies.
Meanwhile, in the turtle tank,
just because they look like junkyard battlebots though, doesn't mean they don't have utility. It's like the old expression goes, don't judge a book by its metal paneling. The military analyst Rob Lee said on X, "I know people are laughing at this, but I don't think it's a crazy adaptation. The Russians are adapting to the particular conditions on the battlefield, in which Ukraine has a lot of FPV drones, but not enough anti-tank guided missiles, anti-tank mines, and artillery. But Ukraine has developed tactics to counter them. The way they captured this one in specific was by aiming for its tracks with smaller grenades. This burned off the rubber element from the tank's rollers, which caused the track to tangle and immobilized it. With a broken track and low visibility, the turtle tank crew got separated from their unit and lost, and this led to their eventual capture. The tit for tat continues though, because we've seen the Russian engineers have extended that sheet metal all the way down to try to protect the tank's treads. This will have a mobility penalty though, because that metal will get stuck in the mud or drag along the ground. It appears like one of the purposes of the turtle tank's adaptation is to increase the cost and time required to destroy it. My first thought is, how do you see or shoot any targets accurately from under that hood? The answer is, many of them do not. The visibility and accuracy is greatly reduced by that metal shell and cage. Limited visibility is pretty much the same problem that the modified Killdozer had. And that's what this reminds me of, like a Killdozer had a baby with a T-72. The captured one revealed that its T-62 115mm cannon was completely disabled. Its turret couldn't rotate, it was locked into position with the gun forward. There was no ammunition found stored in the tank. Footage has shown some of them can fire their cannons, but their weapon is limited to about 30 degrees of movement directly in the front. The entire vehicle has to turn to aim. This is a weak spot that we've seen Ukrainian FPV drones exploit by targeting the front near the cannon. This is why we've seen Russia start to hang chains there. It's not for the Warhammer 40K aesthetic, it's to knock the drone's wings down. And to that point, military analyst Rob Lee said this: so sacrificing the ability to rotate the turret on one tank per platoon that can jam many FPV drone frequencies at once makes sense. So if some of them are not meant as a firing platform, what's its actual purpose then? According to the video released by the Russian Ministry of Defense themselves, these vehicles are mainly salvaged from old stockpiles of T-72s and T-62 tanks that are often inoperable with their cannons. They're modified so that they still have some kind of utility as an armored personnel transport. The host of the Ukrainian military's video of the captured turtle tank says the appearance of turtle tanks reveals that Russia has to resort to refurbishing old ancient tanks from the 1960s. The claim is that there aren't enough new armored vehicles, so they're forced to create poorly armored makeshift ones.
And also, hands off the turtle tank. Have some decency, you guys.
Which brings us to that metal shack or shed or whatever you want to call it on top. The whole modification serves two purposes, I think. First, you have the option to fit a squad of 10 Russian soldiers up there, and the walls prevent them from falling off when the vehicle is in motion. To that point, military expert Rob Lee said, the priority is to get infantry assault groups across open fields to buildings or defensive positions. So the name turtle tank isn't as accurate as barn taxi in that case. The second purpose is what's called standoff distance, or about 6 feet of distance from the roof to the tank itself. That's why there's all those hamster cage looking things along the side on the outside. That's all spaced armor, in theory to allow for multiple FPV drone hits. We've seen versions that have fences welded onto it or corrugated roofing sheets. Even though they're thin, because of the way munitions function on the drones, they need to make direct contact with the side of the tank to damage and penetrate it. This way the FPV drone detonates on the outer shell, which it makes contact with first, which protects the tank. It doesn't matter how thick or thin that scrap metal is when it comes to protecting the crew inside the tank, as long as it explodes a few feet away from the body. This means though that the soldiers inside the shed will be vulnerable to strikes from bullets, artillery, or FPV hits. The metal shack is made up of internal bars that are welded to it. The support bars go all the way around to hold up the sheet panels. Depending on the quality of the metal used, this could add between 5,000 to 10,000 pounds of weight. And typically that 3 to 6 tons of scrap metal would slow it down from its max speed of 25 miles per hour off-road. But the Ukrainian walkthrough of the captured one revealed that they gutted all the tank ammunition, which saves like 1,600 pounds. It also didn't have any explosive reactive armor inside those tiles, which saves another 5,000 pounds. The weight is likely not the factor that's slowing them down to a turtle speed. An open source analysis of one of their movement speeds in actual combat showed an average speed of about 13.5 kilometers per hour or 8 miles per hour, although we've seen ones that are faster. It's likely the limited visibility though that's slowing some of them down. Now in order to judge the turtle tank's performance, we're going to use a bit of open source military analysis that I like to call winging it. So what we do is we look at a map of before they started using the turtle tanks in April, and then we look at a map after they start using it in June, and we see in Chasvi Yar they have made some advances since they started using these vehicles. The same is true for the town of Krasnohorivka. In both places they moved a few kilometers. And there's some evidence to suggest the turtle tank assaults in the Kharkiv direction haven't been as effective so far. Fair warning, that method is not scientific. So we have no idea of knowing if that would have still happened with or without the turtle tanks.
The other thing that I would say is that you should be cleaning your turtles' tanks at least once a week. And I know that sounds like a lot of work.
Modifying vehicles is an old pastime for lower enlisted. When I deployed to Iraq, our US Army Strykers were extremely ghetto-rigged with modifications. Our Strykers looked like actual rhinoceroses because of the electronic warfare extender that was jerry-rigged to the front. It stuck out like a freedom boner. It was legitimately called the Rhino device, and this photograph of my actual Stryker stuck in the mud in Iraq somehow ended up on Reddit, where people are asking what that device in the front actually does. So the way it works is some IEDs in the past used passive infrared sensors to react to heat signatures, so they would explode when they recognized the heat signature from an armored vehicle was right on top of it. To counter this, troops improvised. They went to the market and they bought toasters and hair dryers from the market and attached it to the front of the vehicle while it was on so that it would set off the IEDs early. This Rhino passive infrared defeat system was the US Army's mass-produced version of that. You can see from this photo, we also had cage armor all around the top and a sniper net that limited our remote weapon system 50 cal field of fire almost in half. But it protected us from sniper fire. There are trade-offs to any modification, but usually modifications are done to make a vehicle serve its original purpose better. In the case of the turtle tank, it's unusual in that it's a complete change to its identity. I'm not saying the turtle tank is an engineering marvel, right? I'm saying we ignore and we laugh at what the adversary is doing at our own peril. That's why I think actual Ukrainian soldiers are taking this threat seriously. If you're interested in learning more about modified vehicles throughout history, I highly recommend checking out the legendary Perun's video on the topic. Personally, I think all of the trade-offs that we just talked about will become not worth it if someone's able to invent an air defense vehicle, SHORAD, that can travel alongside tanks and protect them reliably, shooting down FPV drones. Russia has an estimated 250 of the 2K-22 Tunguska air defense vehicles. These are outfitted with 8 surface-to-air missiles and twin 30mm cannons, meant to protect armored columns. During the initial invasion, these were deployed alongside some of the armored assaults. 14 of them were destroyed or captured. They've been absent for much of the assault since then. They were originally designed in the 1980s to counter threats like the American A-10 Warthog. Technically, they're also meant to shoot down drones, but this system lacks the precision to hit a target moving 100 meters away at 150 miles per hour. According to Military Balance, Ukraine has 75 of the 2K-22 Tunguskas at the start of the war, and we haven't seen many of them deployed in offensive operations either. I mean, look at this old radar screen here. Does this look like it really has the fidelity to show you a small 1-meter sized drone clearly on that display? And the same is true for the old Avengers. New SHORAD vehicles to upgrade the old Avenger is the #1 priority in the US Army right now. I think the existence of turtle tanks is partly a symptom of the lack of mature SHORAD systems today. So we've seen the main tactic used with the turtle tank is breaching and clearing a path. It's meant to be a modern-day battering ram of sorts. Russia typically sends in an armored column of 4 to 5 vehicles at a full speed towards Ukrainian positions. They're often put as the first vehicle in the column to absorb as much of the damage as possible. Shoddy not being assigned to that vehicle, it's become a drone magnet. But that's kind of the idea. It's meant to absorb drone hits during an assault. It's like the modern day version of a siege tower from the 1100s. There are scenarios suggested that turtle tanks are purposeful decoys, meant to attract fire away from the more valuable vehicles in the convoy. It's still early in their use, so it's difficult to say for certain what the final results are here. Military historian Matthew Moss called it a breacher vehicle. A breacher is a kind of engineering vehicle with a plow that has the purpose of leading vehicles through minefields. The idea is to get as close as possible to the opposing side's defensive line before dropping off infantry. To this point, many of them have demining plows and rollers attached to the front for clearing a path. Although, from combat footage we can tell that these mine rollers have had mixed results. However, the fact that we've seen the turtle tanks multiplying across the different parts of the front line indicate that they have some practical purpose at the moment. From Russia's perspective, they're facing an environment where Ukraine is producing or acquiring 100,000 FPV drones each month, which are worth about $500 a pop. But one reason this adaptation could go away in the near future is if Ukrainian forces start using more anti-tank guided missiles that are supplied to them. This would change the threat environment for Russia and could change their calculations. To that point on electronic warfare, the captured version of the turtle tank revealed that they outfitted it with an electronic jammer to take out drone signals. Capturing this device is likely the most valuable part for the Ukrainian intelligence when it comes to the turtle tank to analyzing its capabilities. One of the limitations when using an active jammer is that it needs to get within close proximity to disrupt the drone's signal. They essentially work by broadcasting on the same frequency as the drone, but at a much higher power. Imagine shouting really loudly into a bullhorn. You're basically drowning everyone else out in the room. Aside from that apparently being a socially unacceptable way to communicate, it works both ways, because it makes your location stick out and it's easier to detect. But hiding isn't the concern during a full frontal attack. The opposing force already knows where you are. So the real question is, how powerful are these Russian jammers on the turtle tanks? Low-powered ones have a max range of about 30 feet, think of one that like an infantryman might carry, while higher-powered ones can block over 1.5 miles. According to an article by David Hambling for Forbes, jammers can only jam one frequency at a time. The Russian Breakwater Volnarez jammer is about the size of a dinner plate, and it can jam one single frequency out of 20 different ones from 200 meters away. So they tried jam-packing 20 jammers onto one tank to block all frequencies at once. From the information released on the captured one and video of them in operation, we know that the jammers are omnidirectional, meaning that they face in all different directions and capture 360 degrees, and are attached to the rooftops. Many of Ukraine's first-person drones are bought off the shelf commercially, which means that they come out of the box with the exact same frequency. If Russia jams that one frequency, they're all down. This is why Ukraine has soldiers who can go into the software and code each drone's frequency to be different. But they still have alternative methods. There are special drones that are directly wired instead of radio controlled that can't be jammed. But the downside is, it exposes the operator more because they need to get closer. According to the footage released by the Russian Ministry of Defense, they're calling the vehicle not a turtle tank but a Tsar Mangal. From what I understand, Mangal is Russian slang for anti-drone armor, and Tsar was used in the naming convention of things like Tsar Bomb, which meant Emperor of Bombs, so I guess this is the Emperor of anti-drone armor. It's an interesting choice of name though, because it sounds very regal for something that has humble junkyard origins, although maybe that's the point, I don't know. It sounds like the royalty of tanks, but its visuals don't exactly match. So if I were thinking of the turtle tank as an animal trying to evolve, I would think future versions would have anti-air weapons and radars on top that are capable of detecting and shooting down small FPV drones. The Tsar Mangal, Tsar tank, or turtle tank, whatever you prefer to call it, appears to be a stopgap capability, something pressed into service to fill a need while something else can be engineered in the background. We know from public press releases that Russia's working on creating a system that launches tiny rockets to take down drones at close range. Whether it will work or not, your guess is as good as mine. If this adaptation sticks around, or it's eventually abandoned, is something we'll continue to need to watch out for. But I believe one thing to be true for sure. If there were reliable counter-drone weapons and SHORAD available, the turtle tank would already be extinct. Before you go, don't forget tonight is your last chance to win this 10-point Siege 425 crossbow. Head over to go.getenteredtowin.com/taskandpurpose, grab a limited edition collectible, and be automatically entered to win. Did you have any idea there's Ukrainian special forces fighting Russian forces inside Syria right now? So if you want to find out how they got there, what their strategy is, you can find out in this video right on one side of the screen here. I'm not sure which one.